Hi guys, Shane here again for the Tasting Room, brought to you by Tomoka Fine and Rare. This is our second edition of our new podcast. Today I have with me Rob Patchett from Cotswolds Distillery, and we're going to get to know Rob better and also hear everything there was to know about Cotswolds Distillery itself. So Rob, welcome. Thanks a lot for coming again.
Good to see you, Shane.
I guess we've only met a couple of times, and the last time you came down, just I think off the cuff to pop into the shop, with Dan from the Cotswold, and I think we have been speaking just roughly a little bit about obviously cask procurement, which we're still in talks with, but we've got to catch the fine details of that. But I've always loved Cotswolds. We've worked for you guys for many years now. I think even since your first release, and even through I guess the gin days, just having the gin in stock.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm interested to know, just I guess to start with, is just more, I guess, more about yourself. I've done a little deep dive and just to get some facts, and you've much like myself been in the industry for a very long time. Kind of gone from different eras, I guess, from like you said, the bar industry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Into more kind of a brand ambassador role. But I guess, yeah, give me the background. Give me the background.
Well, it's let's see here. My career in the hospitality industry slash drinks, because the two really do merge into each other.
Yeah.
With regards to most people that work in drinks have worked in hospitality, and most people that work in hospitality work with drinks anyway. So, started when I was literally 18 years old in East Yorkshire in a pub, just running pints and plates and just making a few quid on the side, and then I went to do a gap year in Italy when I was 18 years old, and I loved everything about it. I loved everything about the hospitality, the way of life, culture, the people, and everything just made sense. It completely clicked from a culture standpoint. And so, what was meant to be a 6 month stint doing a ski season, just being a bit of a bum, basically, turned into 10 years of being a bum.
Years.
Yeah. I just stayed. I just loved it. Everything, like I say, it just made sense. And I loved, you know, working in an English country pub and you're pulling pints and having a chat with people was great. But when you worked behind bars in Italy, it was more about the culture, the service, proprietary ways of doing things, be it coffee culture or
Yeah.
wine culture, cocktail culture, of course. I mean, you can't talk about cocktails without really talking about Italian hospitality. Some of the best bartenders in the world have come from Italy. And that was a part that really, it struck me as something that I wanted to really deep dive into. So there was a lot of that. And I loved every second of it, winters in the Alps, summers by the lakes, making cocktails. But after 10 years, I very much was like, okay, I think I need to grow up a little bit. So I came back to the UK. Opened a pub, studied to be a sommelier at the same time. So I really wanted to get more into wine, and I wanted to run my own, well, not my own business, but I wanted to run a business and take everything that I'd learned in Italy and put it into the environment that I was in. Did that. And then I moved down to the Cotswolds about 12 years ago to run a pub in a castle.
Oh wow.
I met my wife, realized that hospitality might not be conducive to actually having a long-term relationship and a marriage. So that was something where I said, well, I've got this qualification in wine and I can take everything that I know from that and actually apply it to, and I just spent a little bit of time working in an independent like wine merchants, which was great because you didn't have to wear a suit and be all stiff and rigor and all that sort of stuff, but you could sell incredible wines and have access to all of this wonderful, wonderful liquid. And then on the side of that, they had a gin collection because the gin boom was just happening, and a whiskey collection. And I stumbled into the fact that a distillery had opened just down the road, and so I sort of emailed them and said, "Can I come and visit?" It was Cotswolds Distillery.
Yeah.
We only had gin at that point, and so I was selling a boatload of Cotswolds gin because I just loved it. And after about a year and a half, Dan, the founder of the distillery, said, "Do you want to just come and work for me? Because you're already selling huge quantities anyway." I was like, yes, I do. That was 8 years ago, and yeah, it's been a wild ride ever since, working for the Cotswolds Distillery, both in the local area, nationally, and globally as well.
Wow. Because that's from Yorkshire to Italy and then back.
From Yorkshire to Italy, back, and then in the Cotswolds.
Wow. So, did you, I guess, through, I mean, like you said, you really focused on, I guess, cocktails, the hospitality side in terms of the real, the ins and outs of workings, and then you obviously slowly familiar for wine. But where, I guess, was the spirits always there, but just kind of put on the sideline to where you really focus on spirits, or would you, what was your kind of, I guess, go to in those years?
I mean, gin was a big thing for me when I lived in Italy because um, I didn't earn much money, and free pour is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But yes, and like gin lemon soda in Italy is just one of the biggest aperitifs in in Italy. Always has been, even back in 2002, 2001 when I lived over there. So, Yellow Label Gordon's was something that I literally bled for quite a long time. Um, and then, you started to see these little like Tanqueray 10 coming out, and people holding it with such high reverence. And I was like, there's a lot to this and there's a lot more going on. And I've always found that if I'm passionate about something and I don't know or don't have enough knowledge, I will just deep dive, go behind the curtain and find out
Yeah.
as much as possible. And that was always the way with wine. I remember a lady arguing with me once about her wine wasn't dry enough, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And I was like, why didn't I know why the wine wasn't dry? So I then decided that I would do WSET level 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah.
and then the Guild of Master Sommeliers as well, from that one conversation about why I didn't know whether the wine was dry. And I think whether it's wine, whether it's beer, whether it's hospitality, gin, whiskey, of course, it's all about curiosity. And as long as you're always open to asking questions, learning, and if you don't know something, don't lie, don't make something up, just literally go find out. So then
Perfect.
you're armed with that. That's always just been the way I've done everything.
Wow. It's impressive. I mean, yeah, because I guess the gin boom, I mean, we saw it happening back when we had a cocktail bar beforehand. And yeah, when Sipsmiths kind of opened that floodgate, then everyone and his dog coming out of the gin. Um, but again, it's that fine line of where these gins are coming from. People took it on two different levels in terms of the marketing. You either spend a fortune on the packaging and then really put quite a sub level liquid in there. You had the ones that kind of managed to do both, which is have quite a good liquid, relatively decent bottle. And then some people that really cared too much about the liquid and then just put it in the box standard bottling. Then they were the ones that really struggled to get through that kind of into the limelight because no one's really touching it.
Yeah, I think you could say that about gin and whiskey with regards to there are people that really care about the process, the ingredients, and the final product, including the packaging. And then there are those that actually design everything around a cost of goods,
Yeah.
making sure that the margin's right first. Like, does the whiskey or the gin fit this cost? Does the packaging fit this cost? Is it overall amortized as a fixed cost? Therefore, can we do, you know, grocery channel and duty free and the on trade and the off trade and make sure that everyone has loads and loads of margin, but the
Mm.
quality of the product is not the top of the brief.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, there's the other side of it as well. And I think it's been a wild ride over the last 15 years with regards to gin and whiskey as to how much has come into the market. And people have become, and as consumers, people within the industry, all of us, we've all become a lot more attuned to seeing through the nonsense
Yeah.
and knowing what is good and what isn't. 15, 20 years ago, you gin wise, you had Irish had the green, the blue, and the black. You had Gordon's, Tanqueray, Bombay,
Yeah.
Hendrix, and they were as good as everything got. And now there's so much out there that people really they know their onions. The consumer knows more today than they've ever known about these products, and I think it's fascinating to see where this knowledge, where this capability goes, and who will survive
Yeah.
because there's so much out there now.
Well, Bombay used to be that it would be your top shelf products on the back, for many many years.
Yeah,
And then, all of a sudden it got put to the speed pour range.
yeah.
And I think that's a bit their downfall really because they should have stayed with the Joneses and said, well, how do we adapt then to this situation? We need to kind of regenerate ourselves, redo something marketing wise. But they're just too big a player. I think that opened the floodgates for the kind of the I guess the make it in the bath kind of people, these small, make it in your shed and put it on local towns that get their, really small villages to, to back them and follow them.
Mm.
Um, but it's a funny one because I think the education part came really more after COVID. Yeah, but I think during COVID, I've said on a few occasions, one of the reasons we survived as our retail shop was because we adapted and went straight to online tastings. Yeah. And we just became a conveyor belt for that. We were able to, luckily, because of the ruling, we were classed as essential, so we were able to go into work, set this conveyor belt up and get these tasting sets out. And hundreds and hundreds of people did it. We were doing 2 a week at some point. So that education really showed people, because it's not just taking it for the hell of it. You actually listen to someone. So listen to me and my business partner talk about spirits and really understand why you're paying more than a supermarket price for a premium product.
Yeah.
And that paid dividends massively in the years that followed after we kind of got back open again. That kind of smaller kind of budget per head for a gin or for a whiskey elevated by at least 20-30 pounds. Because they knew then why they were buying the premium product and why to look out for certain botanicals, why to go for a London Dry and not something that just has essence in it. And that really played a massive part, I think. But then now it's almost come like full circle. We've seen that kind of peak come up and then come down because in recent, I guess, months, especially, or even the last year, I've seen that actually for the gin side more, I think whiskey's kind of stayed safe and stayed to its level. But gin, I've seen people kind of not want to spend kind of 45, 55, 60 pounds on gin.
Yeah.
I want to stick at that 35, 40 mark. And again, it could well be down to education because I think, I tell a lot of people as well that when they speak about pricing, whiskey for me is anything under 100, even 200 is a bargain when you take into account everything involved in the process of making whiskey. When you can call up someone, if I know it's through, which I do, and say, right, I've run out of gin, I need it the next day, they can literally make it overnight. All right, there's a skill in there, but it's very, very quick.
Yeah.
And to then justify that your bottle's worth the same as a 12-year-old whiskey on the shelf that actually probably has taken in near close to 20 years to make with the season and the cask and everything else is it it it's a different way of looking at it.
I think going back to your original point about people putting really carefully curated ingredients together and the packaging and things like that, and then going, right, this is our price point, this is who we are, this is where we stand within the category. And then 5 years ago during the pandemic, everyone spent a little bit more and it was more about quality, not quantity. The problem is, and most brands will have found this, is in the last 5 years, glass has gone up,
Yeah.
cork has gone up, labor has gone up, ingredients have gone up, shipping has gone up. And so all of a sudden, everything is creeping up in price and people are like, what's going on? Are these people just getting so greedy? And it's like margins are getting squeezed for the producer, costs of everything are going up, and all of a sudden your price point, if you wanted to stick at your 30 to 35 quid price point, you're now sitting at 40 whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's completely out of your control, and you've probably swallowed so many different cost increases before you have to go, that's it. And I think there's another taxation coming at the end of the year on packaging.
Really?
So, yeah, there's another taxation coming in on all alcohol packaging. So if it weighs a certain amount, and there will be an increased taxation, which that will put another 20p to a pound on the bottle, no matter what it is. Yeah, it's tough because you can't just say to consumers, this is what's happening on an individual basis to every single one. You can't mass blanket that. But yeah, producers, this next 5 years is going to be tough for small producers.
Seems due to go up, and I remember speaking to, it was someone, I can't remember the guy's name now, so I apologize to him, but the guy from Glenfarclas was telling me the increase in their energy alone for the year was shocking. You look at that £200,000 increase for a year because they're on 24/7.
Yeah.
And they were always ones that were very, very decent on price, and they had no choice but to put the price up. And that was really then almost like hitting home properly about how bad it is out there, because for them to then turn around and say they've got to do it, it is tough.
Yeah,
I don't see that changing.
I don't think there's a business out there that can go, yeah, we We haven't had any increases. Government take care of that. Packaging takes care of that. Utilities, cost of goods, raw materials. Our barley has gone up twofold, maybe even threefold in the last 5 years. But we're completely committed to using only local barley. So that's just something that we have to take and deal with and run with.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, it's quite dry when you talk about the dour elements of the business, but at the end of the day, it's always these things that go on behind the scenes that then will caveat into the reality of someone picking up a bottle and going, "This looks amazing," looking at the price and going, "Well, that's not amazing." Anyway, yeah,
But that's the job of the guy in the shop. Again, we say something about our own shop. It's a personal shopping experience. If we can educate you on why it's that price and tell you everything behind it, and give you a sample to try, that's always a key for me. When you are asking someone to spend quite a decent money on something, you have to have a sample. We always, most people that we stop, we always say that make sure we have a sample on site because liquid to lips is a no-brainer.
it's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It is the biggest thing because you're asking people to take almost a gamble on something of a certain amount of money, and if they are completely blind to the experience of what it tastes like, what it smells like, everything like that, then yeah, that is a gamble. Whereas liquid to lips in hand selling something that is very special is so important because you're gaining trust, you're gaining confidence, they'll come back. And so, like you say, you become an advocate not only for your own shop, but for the product. And then you're building a rapport with the consumer that means a lot to them because, yes, you can buy a lot of things online, but going and speaking to someone that you trust and has that knowledge and that capability to really steer you in the right direction is more valuable than Amazon Prime getting it within 12 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always been a up for debate topic, and that's always my answer.
Yeah, always.
Actually,
Yeah.
they can if they want. Feel free.
Yeah.
But if you want to get into the right product for yourself or a gift, there is no competition.
Absolutely.
So when you went to, I guess, when you did move to Cotswold, and obviously you were your merchant, what attracted you to Cotswold rather than, I mean, other than I guess the amazing location and everything else? Was it the gin? Was it the gin side, or was it the actual whiskey production that they were looking to then go into fully? And obviously they had liquid down aging, really.
Yeah, it was whiskey.
It was whiskey.
It was whiskey, yeah. I was doing like the odd little freelance job for a couple of other gin distilleries. Um, but Cotswolds, Dan's passion, Dan's story. I loved the gin. I loved the site. I knew a lot of the team. They were all wonderful as well. And then the fact that whiskey was on the horizon of what was going to be the next iteration, the next level up of what the business was be. And they were willing to take a chance on me. They put me in a field sales role that covered quite a large portion of England. And I had no field sales experience at all. I'd been in so many different levels of the industry, but I hadn't been out there cold calling, pounding the pavement, and going, buy Cotswolds gin. And they took a chance on me, and I like to think it paid off, but we learned and we grew together as a brand. And then also from an experiential standpoint of how we look, feel, and are communicated in the industry as well. And I think it was also the fact that we were all in the same boat. Dan had no drinks industry background. The distilling team were all pretty fresh and new from either Heriot Watt or studying with the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. And so there was just this enthusiasm and this creativity and this push and this drive collectively to just run at the industry a lot blind.
Yeah.
But hell, we were all doing it together, and that's what made it so exciting. And we were the complete underdogs. Yes, we had a dry gin that was made in England, therefore made sense. But at that time, we were going to be the fourth English whiskey coming out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in 2017, when we released the first whiskey, the Signature, yeah, we were the fourth English whiskey. And I was at that point, I'd been moved to cover London. And yeah, I was knocking on everyone's doors going, oh, great, you've got Scotch and you've got Irish and you've got bourbon and you've got Japanese and you might have a few little outliers from other countries. But we're in England and you don't have an English whiskey. And this was around 2018, 2019. And everybody was like, yeah, we should talk. We should definitely do this. This is so exciting. 2020 hits. everybody sort of just, there's no going to London, there's no going to bars, there are no bars, there are no bartenders. And so the business really was like, we need to focus on where we can actually make the most difference for the business. That wasn't in the on-trade, unfortunately, to the view of a few people. Um, and when we came back out of the pandemic and we were able to go back down and, go rekindle these conversations, there was so many more distilleries from England that had come out. And all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, we're already talking to X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I didn't miss, but that little gap with COVID really sort of hit with regards to an opportunity to be. I mean, we still do really well, and we've got some great customers. I had the team from the Ritz at the distillery yesterday. But yeah, back in 2018, 17, 18, 19 was so exciting because you were walking around with unicorn tears. Not the gin,
Yeah.
but actual, you had bottled, really good quality English whiskey that nobody was really seeing anywhere. You had Hicks and Healy, you had Adnams, you had, Norfolk, St. George,
Yeah.
English whiskey distillery, but we were out there with a really exciting product, and it was just such a buzz. And it still is a buzz to this day, but back then, yeah, we were all just out there screaming at the top of our lungs, this is amazing whiskey, and no one else is out there doing this. It was great.
Because I think when I mean, I don't know if it took them by surprise, but I think their gin did a lot better than I think they maybe would have hoped for, because the gin was very
Well, the original idea around the gin was, and if you look on the top of every bottle of gin, it still says limited release.
yeah.
The original idea with the gin was we'd do 1,000 bottles a year. We released it in our shop, a few local farm shops in the Cotswolds, a bar or a restaurant here and there. And then after 3 years in 2017, we would just literally go, okay, we've got whiskey now. We don't need to do gin anymore. So we would put the gin aside, and then we just focus on being a whiskey distillery. But I think it was within 4 months, Majestic had taken it on, Harvey Nicks, Selfridges. There was so many really key players. Fortnum and Mason had come in and really been huge advocates for the gin in the early days. So it was almost a point of, by 2018, there was a reactivity to the gin, as opposed to, this was all part of the plan. This was on a business plan. This was something that we knew was going to happen. And yeah, by 2017, not only were we were distilling twice a day, 7 days a week, just to keep up with demand, we had to buy a second gin still and increase capacity from 500 litres to 1,200 litres just to keep up. And we thought, great, we've got this huge still, we'll never need to do anything ever again with regards to gin. And in the last month, we've had to get the old gin still Lorelei back up and running. So we've got two gin stills running side by side, just to keep up with the demand that still exists to this day. So yeah, you're right. Long story short, the gin, if you'd have written a business plan, if you wrote, say for instance, you took the last 11 years and the trajectory of the dry gin, and you wrote that down as a business plan, and you presented it to an investor or a bank today, they'd go, that will never happen.
Yeah.
The gin market cannot sustain this amount of growth, but right time, right product, right people. And all of a sudden, yeah, we went from possibly doing 1,000 bottles a year to where it is today, which is 35 countries across all UK airports. We've got listings in some of the key big accounts like Waitrose and Marks and Spencers, plus, plus, plus. And we still only feel like we're scratching the surface with it. And so whilst we loved having that success with the gin, it ever so slightly has taken a bit of the shine off the fact that we were always and are always going to be a single malt whiskey distillery. And so, yeah, I can't count the amount of times I've walked into an account and gone, hey, how's it going? I'm Rob. I've got Cotswolds whiskey. And they go, oh, you're doing whiskey now. I love your gin. And you're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Or even some extent, because we made a really great cream liqueur.
Yes. Should we have as well? Yeah.
Yeah, you go into some accounts, especially around Birmingham. I don't know why, but in Birmingham, the cream liqueur has such a huge following. You go into some accounts and they go, oh, have you brought your cream liqueur? And you're like, I brought single malt whiskey. They're like, no, but did you bring the cream liqueur? And you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also a benefit because that means we've got something for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic starting, because you know you've been it opened in 2014, I
Yeah.
believe. So
Yeah, 2014.
it's still a relatively short space of time.
Mm.
So to be at that level already is I think is a great sign of what's to come and what's to build upon. And like you said, being in that many countries as well already,
Yeah.
it's and you've got now so many I say cogs working, and you're just expanding them also. And obviously now you're in that point where more and more whiskies can start coming out, can release special editions. Because that always baffles me as well, because you just touched upon it back then that it's Daniel Zor, is that correct?
Danjor, yeah. Yeah.
So he had his background is financial trade, though, right?
Yeah.
So did he I guess fund most of it himself, or did he try and obviously capitalize and outsource and some fundraising?
The initial upfront was his life savings, his wife's life savings.
God.
I mean, if you want to talk about pushing all the chips in
Yeah.
on a dream, and then after that, reaching out to a few close friends who, very, very gracefully and generously opened their checkbooks, and also, were founding investors. I mean, you can't say enough about the fact that Dan had a great idea, passion, and went, I'm pushing everything in.
Yeah.
This is riding on everything I've got. And I'll tell you what, even to this day, he's still hungry because this is his baby. He's not. Yes, he was working in the city, and yes, people may say he was a financial, but he's a spirits geek. Not just whiskey, but like
I was
anything.
gonna say, actually, is it more is anything?
It's all about whiskey for him,
Yeah.
but he is just a spirits fiend.
Yeah.
Eau de vies, rums from different parts of, from, be it molasses or anything. Like if he goes on holiday, he's going on a busman's holiday, and he's going to a distillery and he's asking questions, and he's still got that curiosity to this day. And so for him, this is all just, it's not a passion project. It's his baby. It's his
Yeah.
everything. And he's been able to actually use that infectious excitement about our project to bring so many more people along on the ride as well. So we do have a huge investor circle that are super patient, really understanding, massive advocates as well. So, when we talk about brand ambassadors, I mean, way before we even thought about hiring or promoting a brand ambassador, Dan, his wife, his whole family, and all of his friends were the true original brand ambassadors that were out singing the gospel of the distillery. And, he's being able to create this huge following based on the fact that he just loved good quality, well-made spirit. That was it.
No. Wow. And then obviously, yes, I guess being an advocate for UK whiskey as well is a big thing as well, because it has to be. It's quite a big accolade to live up to, because when you are competing with everyone else, Scotland, Ireland, Japan, you have to come out, punching
Yeah, I mean,
to really stand out. Anyway.
it was more about world whiskey that excited him more than anything. He went to a few spirit shows in America, and he was starting to see this boom
Yeah.
of small, progressive, quality-driven distilleries in America. And he was like, there is something happening right now. A lot of it did stem from being in Paris. He lived in Paris for quite a long time, and he got invited. So he used to go to wineries and champagne houses and Calvados houses as well. And he got invited to a tasting at La Maison du Whisky, one of the one of the pinnacle sites in not only France and Paris but the world for whiskey fans. And he went along to this tasting, and I think that definitely sparked something in him to the point where the French market for whiskey is very open because they have their own distillers, obviously Cognac and Calvados and so the embracing of world whiskey was very much something that La Maison de Whisky were early adopters of. So he was able to discover brands like Cavalan,
Yes.
and finding out that what you could get to a novice could be akin to like a 15-year-old sherry cask from Scotland, and it's actually a 4-year-old red wine STR cask from Taiwan. That was intriguing to him because all of a sudden the rules were broken. The standards and the norms of what you believe to be a good whiskey were going out the window. And I think there was a collective of what he saw in America, what he was seeing with the capabilities of New World whiskey, and then his own passion for whiskey. He used to go over to the sort of west coast of Scotland and tour around all the distilleries in Scotland, he got convinced by the great Jim McEwan to buy a cask of whiskey at Bruichladdich. Um, yeah, yeah. He literally said, I walked in and I had no money, and I spent an afternoon with Jim McEwan, and me and my friend Dave walked out with even less money that I didn't have, but we owned a cask of whiskey because Jim McEwan is just so infectious that you know, it was always going to be inevitable that he would sell you a cask.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it was nearly 22, 23 years ago, he bought a cask, bourbon cask up at Bruichladdich. And so then, obviously, from that, you have this kinship, you have this affinity to Bruichladdich. That's your team, that's your badge,
Yeah.
they're the people that you follow and support. And he'd go every year as a little pilgrimage with Dave, and they'd go and visit their cask and check in on it and speak to Jim McEwan. And Bruichladdich are very much about, you know, people, product, and place. We're of Islay, people of Islay, Islay barley, and just championing the area. And Dan really saw the value in that ethos from a distillery as well. And so all of a sudden, the cogs might start turning. I think it was around about 2012, due to some family illness, he decided that he was going to buy a little sort of retreat in the Cotswolds. Lived in London by that point, and yeah, he just wanted to get away, get out, be able to give his family the opportunity to relax and, you know, not be so entrenched in like the hustle and the bustle and the sort of fervor of being in London. And the more time that they spent in the Cotswolds with, you know, nice rolling hills, great weather, and, you know, nice days. I mean, it's literally one of the most beautiful places I've ever been and now live in. And he was just finding more and more reasons to stay there and not be in London.
Yeah.
And I think it was an amalgamation of wanting to stay in the Cotswolds, wanting to do something that he could be passionate about and believe in, and then having this uncontrollable excitement and curiosity for whiskey, that it all started coming together. So that by the time, I think he said to me, he said, yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just had this really long lunch with friends and looked out over, you know, a couple of glasses of wine, looked out over this field of barley and went, why isn't one making whiskey in the Cotswolds? Rang up Forsyths, the still makers, the most famous still makers on the planet, and said, how much are a set of stills? I think they said to him, about 1.3 million. And he went, cool, I'm about 1.2 short. All right, I'll call you back. I mean, if you want to talk about like just blind enthusiasm, it's not that Dan was naive to anything. Dan is measured, calculated in so many different ways, but he just knew that that was something that he wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
And he's so driven. If he sees something and he wants to do it, he's so driven to make things happen that that was it. The ball, you know, the snowball had been made. It had been started to roll down the hill, and it was gaining so much momentum that, yeah, in 2014, the site was bought. And by the end of 2014, we were making whiskey and gin. That wasn't part of the plan. He always jokes that the gin still was literally bought with the last of the cash that they didn't have. But
And I think maybe it came from realization that you need something to tick you over while that whiskey's aging.
yeah, I mean, the funny part is when people say that, they say, "Oh yeah, the gin, you know, that's a source of revenue while you're waiting for
Yeah.
your whiskey." And you can check a P&L. It doesn't pay the bills when you're making whiskey, but what it does do is it opens the doors for people to be aware of your brand.
Yeah.
So all of these export countries that I've named, the Cotswolds gin, sort of people loved it. They really resonated with how good quality it was made and everything like that. And so they'd go, yep, we'll take the gin. And then it was the capability to go, hey, by the way, this is our new make for our whiskey. What do you think? This is our 6-month-old red wine STR. What do you think? And so you'd keep people updated, your suppliers and your distributors, on how the whiskey was progressing, so that when it came to having it ready, you weren't trying to open new doors. Doors were already opened. You just had to feed in.
Yeah.
And that's really the key part of making gin when you're a whiskey distillery. It's less about revenue, it's more about brand building.
Yeah. Because people get used to that, but I guess that brand name being out there, that it's not too much of a surprise then when the whiskey shows up.
Yeah.
Then it's like a natural, oh, well, you know, as long as they obviously like different types of spirits, but they're naturally intrigued then to take a try and then get hooked.
Yeah.
But that's always interesting to me as well, because I think you've kind of explained it now because of his background and his I guess his visions into world whiskey, because the natural, I guess, normal cask people would thrive to is not necessarily always sherry. That comes down the line, but American oak or bourbon. But that obviously now explains why the red cask is like the more standard.
Yeah.
Gee.
So the great story around that is actually it's a full circle moment where Dan's in the Dunnage warehouse on Isla at Brooklady with his friend Dave speaking to Jim McEwen. And he's at that point where he's like, I really want to start my distillery. And he's running the idea past Jim McEwen, and Jim McEwen's telling him it's his destiny. He's got to do it. I'm not going to use a Scottish accent to emulate Jim, but that was basically how he did it. And Dan's like, cool, all right, yeah, I'm going to do it. Are you busy? Do you want to help? And Jim McEwen is like, I'm kind of running one of the biggest distilleries on Islay, so no. But being the ever gracious gentleman that he is, and always will be, he said, my ex-colleague from Bowmore, where Jim McEwen used to work, Harry Coburn, was the distillery manager. He's just retired. He's doing consultancy. Give him a call. And so Dan gave him a call, and Harry Coburn was like, yep, I'm free. I'll help you out. No problem. So Harry Coburn was able to work with Forsyths on the installation, the young team that Dan had sort of amassed as the distillers that he would be working with. Because as you can imagine, there's no distillers from Scotland going, English whiskey, less than 1,000,000 liters, sign me up. I'll be there in a minute. So it really was about like people coming out of Heriot Watt and IBD and just having a passion and a hunger to be part of something new, that Dan was able to amass a distilling team. But Harry was able to be that voice of experience and really make sure that all of the engineering parts and elements of running a distillery were adhered to and aware of. But Harry was also brilliant because he said, listen, I can do everything with regards to, your engineering, your process, but I can't refine your spirit. I'm a distillery manager. I'm not a distiller. He said, but my friend Jim, he is very good at refining spirit. He knows all the best coopers in the world with regards to sourcing casks. He's your guy. He's worked with a few brands that you might be aware of. So he's your guy. And so Jim Swan comes down, and Dan's like, listen, this is where I want to be. I really love Cavalan. I think Cavalan, and especially Vigna Barrique, is a style of whiskey that has resonated with me for a long time. And Jim said, well, that's handy, because not only did I help Ian Chang and the family and the King Car sort of dynasty set up Cavalan, but I also created the red wine STR, so that maturation in hotter climates and consistency would be something that everyone would benefit from. So all of a sudden, you've gone from Dan in a warehouse on Islay, whilst also living in Paris, going, I love this Taiwanese red wine cask that's absolutely crazy, going full circle all the way through to Jim Swan going, yeah, well, I'm here, and I helped set up Cavalan, and I created the red wine STR. So don't worry, I've got it all covered. So he was able to really help us refine our process on making the spirit. So long fermentation, clear worts, long fermentation, really high tight cut points with regards to having a fruity ester driven spirit that would then react with all of the lignans and vanillins that are recreated from shaving, toasting, and recharring a red wine cask, so that you could have something that was bright and unctuous and fruity and got loads of layers of flavor and texture in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're not looking at a timeline of, well, when the whiskey's ready in 10 years, we can then have a product. It's like, no, you can have something in a very short amount of time, because every single element of your production has been fine-tuned to creating something that mitigates long-term aging, because you don't need any impurities to flash off. It was the good into good makes good.
Yeah.
And that's what Jim brought to the table, and he was an absolute gent, and he worked with the entire team, and he was just a font of knowledge, and he really, really did work so hard with Dan and the team to make sure that what we were able to release wasn't measure 10 times and cut once. It was, this will be your spirit, and this is how it'll turn out, and you will be on a great thing.
And a lot of pieces to fall into place, which is almost like stars align, and that's a lot. I mean, obviously you've got huge amount of passion and everything else that's driving it all, but for that to all fall in place and meet the right people at the right time,
Yeah.
it's just, I love stories like that. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, because then it's also just, I've always loved that story, because you couldn't plan, predict,
No.
or go anywhere near being able to come close to mapping that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden, yeah, one conversation turns into another conversation. And I think that's the great thing about the whiskey industry. You must find it as
Yeah.
well, is that whiskey is wonderful. And, the passion around people creating these products is wonderful. But the people, more than anything, are the best part about whiskey.
Yeah.
Storytellers, people that just love to work within the industry, help each other out. And, whenever I go and do a whiskey festival, I'd love doing the whiskey festivals, but my favorite part is when you all go for a beer afterwards and it's a bar full of whiskey ambassadors and whiskey makers and brand owners, and we're all just, and you're not like hardcore chatting about the ins and outs of your P&L. You're just talking about the industry,
Yeah.
and it's just really great. It's lovely people.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. I love that. So obviously we want to get into trying some stuff, but just before we do, I guess where I guess is there anything that I guess is not known or should be known? Where's Cotswolds going in the future? That if they got plans, or anything new that in the next couple of years that they're trying? Yeah, anything might be new releases or a new style of whiskey. Which different markets you're going into? Because obviously we know, from speaking to a lot of people, where the Asian and Indian markets are huge now. So, is that one of the countries that you referenced earlier that you're going into currently, or you look into?
Yeah, we are in India. There is a little bit of a focus, but I think, let's touch back on India a bit later
Yeah,
because there are some really interesting um, aspects and elements of the Indian market. But I think, if you look at the last 12 months versus the next 24 months, what we do and what we're doing, one of the most exciting things that we very much are guilty of not shouting about enough is that we make whiskey for the King of England.
I think I've heard that
Yeah.
actually.
So
Which is, yeah, why don't you shout about that? I mean,
yeah, the country estate of King Charles is Highgrove Manor in the South Cotswolds.
yes,
He grows heirloom plumage archer barley on his estate organically, and for about 7 years we have been distilling and maturing whiskey from that barley. And when he was coronated and made king back in 2022, yeah. We actually got approached by Highgrove to say, well, listen, can you start making some Highgrove limited edition whiskies? And yeah, we're 3 years into the relationship now. We've done whiskies for his coronation. We've done it for his birthday. We've done it for his anniversary. He has given us some of his personal oil paintings to use as the packaging on these whiskies as well. And it's a really, really great relationship that we're very, very proud of. And, there's only so much you can scream about when you've got so many other different things on,
yeah,
but we're really proud of the fact that, yeah, we make whiskey for the King of England.
because he loves his whiskey.
He does, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's a huge Lefroy fan, and we
yeah,
don't make peated whiskey, but yeah, we're proud collaborators to make whiskey for the King of England, and so that's been something that we've been really enjoying. And then the next 24 months, we recently upgraded our whiskey distillery from the original distillery that Dan sourced and built back in 2014. And for the last 3 years, we've been actually operating on brand new Forsyth equipment that gives us the capability to make 4 times the amount that we originally did. So we have all this new distilling capacity, and so we've been slowly ticking away, putting away more stock, not only for the strategic lines, our core range, but also we've been able to do a little bit more second fill, which is something that for long-term aging is quite exciting. So between collaborating with the King, building a brand new distillery, spirit matching, which was 6 months of not very good times for the distilling team, but we got there in the end, and we've made something that is truly incredible, and then being able to actually confidently have the amount of whiskey that we need long term to be able to endeavor into markets like China, India, Japan, Taiwan, the US, and do it effectively so that it's not about how much whiskey we've got, it's about how much we can brand build within those markets and be England's premier whiskey distillery within these marketplaces as well. Because again, 2014, we were number 4.
yeah.
2025, we're one of 64.
So
There's a lot of English whiskey distilleries. So yeah, we need to keep pushing and progressing and being at the front of what the category is and pushing it forward. And so that's kind of the focus where we've been, where we are, and where we're going.
I think I think when I think of I guess when I go to names in my head though of English distilleries, you're still kind of in that discussion of the top three. Only three that really kind of I hear always people talking about is just English Norfolk, the Lakes, and Cotswold.
Yeah,
So I think it doesn't matter how many's out there, as long as you remain in that top level. I think that's
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think the only way you do that is by organically progressing within the means of who you are and what you are and being consistent.
yeah.
Not chopping and changing your identity or, your policies on wood or your style of whiskey or anything like that. And, signature whiskey, it's still our best selling whiskey product. It's the same whiskey that we released in 2017 that it is today. We haven't changed anything. In fact, we barely even changed the price, which is painful.
Yeah.
But it still means that it's an amazing whiskey that's out there consistently. I think the only thing that we changed was the outer box because we had this really beautiful, elegant, like silky grey matte box.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. That was the original. And then we went into Waitrose and we saw it on a shelf and went, "Ooh, that fades all the way to the back." So that was the only thing that we really changed, was just to make the box pop a little bit more because we were now on the shelves with giants and we needed to stay relevant. Other than that, we have stayed so consistent and we've always stayed true to the good into good makes good and listening to our fans and our consumers and yeah, making good whiskey.
Yeah. And that whiskey you obviously make us like you store it on site as well, or do you store it elsewhere?
Yeah, so we have
Takes a lot of space.
we have a storage facility on site, and then the other three storage facilities we have are within 5 minutes of the distillery.
Okay.
So we always store. We didn't always, but in the last 4 or 5 years, we worked really hard to get everything into the Cotswolds, because we used to use Plutus, which was the old rum vaults underneath the River Mersey in Liverpool, and it was great because having your own bonded warehouse is super expensive.
Yeah.
But not only was it really hard to get cask samples and things like that logistically because a lot of other people use Plutus, but also time restraints. And you're underneath the River Mersey. There's no night and day. There's no summer and winter. There's no environmental change. So your barrels are just the same, staying the same. Whereas where we are now, we have a better idea of our angel share,
Yeah.
um, and summers are summer, and some winter, and the last 2 winters have been quite mild. The last 3, 4 summers have been quite aggressive. So we actually know and understand a lot more about our climate that we're able to mature in now, and that also adds to it being quintessentially Cotswolds because it's not only about where we start in the barley field on Aikman Street Farm near Blenheim Palace. It's what we do on site. It's where we mature and everything else.
Yeah. And that addition you mentioned there for the king, is that only for his consumption, or is that released as a limited edition?
So they get released. We get small quantities through the distillery, and then the rest goes through his Highgrove shop,
Yeah.
and everything gets donated to charity to the King's Trust.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So some bottles end up on the secondary market. We don't design anything for the secondary market. I know some brands do, but yeah, everything goes to Highgrove, and then when it's sold, it all gets donated to charity. So it's a great collaboration, and we know that it is going to a good cause as well.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's drink something.
Yeah.
What have you brought along, and then we'll let's delve into some Cotswold liquid.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I wanted to bring along was one of our recent releases, and that is the Amber Meadow, which is part of our Harvest series. And it's really great because we have one of the most exciting whiskey makers in the entire industry. Um, she's called Alice Pearson, and she has been with us for nearly 8 years. She started with us just in the shop, just sort of working on weekends and things like that. And through pure passion and knowledge and thirst for more knowledge, she has progressed her way internally within the company, all the way now to the point where she is head of all production.
Wow.
So she manages 2 distilleries, gin stills, whiskey stills, the warehouses, the bottling, and everything else that goes in that. And then she also does our blending. We don't do a lot of, we do a lot of cask expressions, bourbon cask and peated cask and red wine STR. But once a year, Alice really gets to go full tilt into her own creative space, which she has an abundance of. And that is, we source a painting from a local artist in the Cotswolds. So this is Amber Meadow by Lucy Pratt on the packaging here. And we give the painting to Alice, and then every year Alice gets to make a blend from different casks at the distillery to create a flavor profile that she thinks best reflects not only the painting, but what the artist is trying to translate through the painting. And every year, different artists, different painting, and a different combination of casks. And this is the third release that we've done, in which Alice looked at this and she saw all the oranges and all the different elements that go into the landscape. And she looked at using sweet muscatel wine casks, first and second fill bourbon casks. And then because we don't have peated malt, we only have peated casks. It gives us a liquid that is really nice and saline and peppery. So she uses small amounts of that,
Yeah.
like salt and pepper, to elevate all of the fruit flavors.
Spice.
Yeah. Like a tiny, tiny little bit, but it just elevates. And so, yeah, we've got, I think, 2 Moscatel sweet wine casks in there, 1 bourbon, 1 refill bourbon. So 1 first fill, 1 second fill. And then a small amount of peated just to elevate it. Bottled at 51.6, only 1,500 bottles globally. And it tells 2 great stories. It tells great stories of all of the brilliant independent artists that we have in the Cotswolds and all the creative, passionate people that are in the Cotswolds. But also, more importantly to me anyway, it tells a story of Alice and her journey, and not only with us, but in blending, her creativity. Alice is 25 years old.
25.
Yeah. And
It's impressive.
honestly,
It's very impressive.
you've never met anyone so impressive at 25 years old in your life. Like what she is able to shoulder with regards to the responsibility of the distillery, the production of everything, the maturation, the warehouse movements of everything, all of the health and safety and the paperwork that goes into it, the bottling hall as well, and then be able to then just go, I'm also massively creative and do this.
Yeah, it's a lot to have on your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, in 25 years, when she turns 50 and she's been doing this literally for 32 years, 33 years, we have to look back on things like this and go, this is the starting point on what
Yeah.
is someone that is reformatting and remolding what we think of when we think of passionate master distillers and creatives within the whiskey industry. So that's what I'm most excited for about this.
All right, well, let's get some
Yeah.
poured out, and then you've got 2 glasses there.
Yep.
Ooh, you delve in.
So this was released actually last September. Yeah, please do. And Lucy's great fun. We had a lot of fun working with Lucy to develop this product, just because she's such a character. She's really she's just like an effervescent, wonderful person, and so she was really enthusiastic about working with not only Alice but us as a brand as well. And she was very generous, not only with her time and her paintings, but also just her creativity as well.
It's really on the packaging, actually. I love the color tones that they've chosen here. I guess that's also all to match the painting anyway.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Muscatel is a good cask to use as well.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't got many of them, but the reality is that's the joy of Alice and doing this product is Alice just has, Dan says to her as a brief, whatever you want,
Yeah.
anything, whatever you want, just go into the warehouse and create something that you think on your standard and your terms is special.
And that must be amazing for her, because also shows the amount of trust she has.
Yeah. And she's always delivered. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah, and she's always delivered. She really focuses on balance, length, and texture. So it's not about making caricature flavors of this is a sherry bomb or this is a virgin oak monster, or
Yeah.
that's why she likes using the peated, just to sort of balance out that salinity and pepperiness of something that.
Which is interesting, like you said, because you don't usually do peated whiskey.
No.
It's nice to add that kind of, put the difference in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. And She does a great job. She really does. And these Muscatel casks, they weren't easy to work with. You know, we filled them, and in the early stages of their maturation, which was about 7 or 8 years ago, they'd clouded initially. We had them rested dunnage and they'd clouded, and we were like, well, I guess we'll just leave those. And it was actually, we'd left them in the warehouse, and I was doing a warehouse tasting for our 10th birthday about a year ago. And they sort of said, listen, if you want to do cask samples for this warehouse tasting, just go for it. Just tell us what you pull and we'll get it all signed off and everything.
Yeah.
And so I went and I said, oh, these Muscatel casks. And Alice went, they've clouded, so just, be careful. I went in and I went into the racking, took the bung out, and then I started pumping. So I didn't use a valanche. I didn't sort of go right to the bottom. I used a hand pump to pull out just what I needed, because it's just a little bit more efficient if you want to fill a full bottle. So I pulled these 2 bottles of Muscatel, and then I went up to the office and I was signing them out and everything. And Alice was like, where'd you get that? And I went, oh, that's that Muscatel cask that sat. And she went, I thought they'd clouded. And I went, well, I just pulled from the top. So, I didn't go deep into the cask.
So that's the bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically that was the realization that Alice went, oh, I can use them. She had her eye on them for ages. But that meant that she had to personally go into the racking and hand pump 2 casks from the top down into IBC to then use it in this blend. And as soon as it went, like, you saw a little trace of the cloudiness, we just stopped because it had all dropped. So this is a labor of love in many regards, but it's also hand pumping 2 full casks into IBC. I did 2 bottles and I was exhausted. But yeah, I just love the apricots that shine through on this, apricots and the peaches. It really does deliver like this continuity of like this golden peachy amber stone fruit color.
It's huge on the nose there.
All of those elements that are in the painting, and then it delivers with an aroma and a flavor that backs it all up. So it's got a really nice synergy between all of the elements.
I find it rarer to find peaches and apricots and stone fruits on the nose now. It's either quite tropical, it's like sherry farm.
Yeah.
Apple orchards kind of always a key one.
Yeah, I mean, we do have quite a ubiquitous apple and pear element to our spirit. But what we're able to find is that the consistency of the spirit paired with the experimentation of different casks allows us to access those stones and peaches and things, stone fruits and peaches. We get a lot with our bourbon cask. That gives us really good stone fruit and peaches. Our bourbon cask is bottled at 59.1%. And if you have that in a highball, just, frozen glass, good stem of spirit ice, bourbon cask, double measure, and then just some cold soda water. It's just peach juice. It's just effervescent peach juice. It's so good. But yeah, we are able to access really good wide spectrums of fruit through our spirit, because we're not a bourbon house, we're not a sherry house, we're not just a red wine STR house. We have this whole spectrum of casks that really do allow us to access flavors that if you just did a singular style, you wouldn't have that flexibility. Yeah. And that's the most exciting thing. And that's why I love these harvest series that Alice does, is that you don't know what's going to come out.
Yeah. So that I guess that stone fruit note, is that really coming through because of the Muscatel?
It's 2 elements. So the Muscatel definitely gave it like that spiced Seville orange. And then the bourbon cask gives not only like savory honey and stone fruit, the 2 together, they create that accentuation.
Still quite apparent as well.
Yeah. That's what gives it that accentuated, dried and fresh apricots, because you've got juicy fruit and then you've got the savory elements of a dried apricot as well.
But the peat of smoke is so supple.
Oh, it's at the very, very, very back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's to be honest, on the first taste, I was either like, there's not even much there at all. It just lingers after, and that's where oh, it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
I mean, that's what our peater cask as well is. You smell it and there's nothing.
Really?
There's absolutely nothing, because it's all from the wood. So people say, oh, what's the ppm on your peated cask? And it's like, I don't know. What? Yeah. What's the ppm at Lafroig? And then dilute it down, because we're only using X quarter casks from a distillery I've just named that I shouldn't really say, on Isla. So it's from the wood, it's not from the grain of the malting or anything like that, which means that when it comes to actually being part of a flavor profile, it won't be there on the nose. It will all be there on the palate, but at the very back end, because again, it's only about 5 or 6 liters. It's a small quantity.
Oh, wow. But that works so well because I always, it's a tough one, peat whiskey, because it's, I always use the analogy that it's like Marmite, even whiskey drinkers. You're either gonna like it, don't like it. And some people find it really harsh. Some people like it in moderation. I'm in those people, I think, because I've got more of a sweeter tooth.
Yeah.
But I'm not a peated whiskey drinker 24/7. It has to be very rare occasion. I'd normally pair it with something, for example. Yeah. But it's not my average go to, and I think a lot of people feel the same. And obviously, you've got that point of difference is people like the medicinal side and people like the more child smoky side,
Yeah.
and that's normally the more common side.
Yeah.
The medicinal ones are the ones that really is for the hard August stream. The old boys, the ones that really kind of like to grit their teeth.
I think it's different markets as well.
Yeah.
Um, the Germans love peat. The Swedes and the Norwegian, they love it as well. So you find that a lot of these Scandinavian countries really elevate and gravitate towards it. Um,
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I mean, they do a lot of smoked foods,
Yeah.
so I imagine there is an element to that. But is it for everyone? No. Is it sustainable long term? Don't know. I also think that sometimes it's where people are on their flavor journey. If you think about when people get into things like wine, they're going for these big, brash Australian Shirazes or
Yeah, yeah.
Californian Napa Valley Cabs or just these big, fat, big, huge, juicy wines. Lots of wood extraction, lots of huge jammy fruit. And then I personally have found this, as you progress through your journey of trying different things, you might find that you gravitate more towards subtle styles of flavors, or like Gamay and Beaujolais and
Yeah.
things that are a little bit more derivative of the fruit and the farm. And I think sometimes with whiskey, you find that as well. People will start and they'll go for Kaila and Ardbeg and Lafroig and things like that. And whilst they'll still enjoy it, they might start looking on their journey further down the line for more subtle and nuanced styles of flavors because all of a sudden they don't want these big, huge caricature flavors anymore. They're looking for the difference between distilleries. So they're looking for the distillery character. And sometimes when you're talking about bourbon casks, first fill, second fill, that's when you start to see what the distillery is truly about because that is the true distillery character. And I think it's just where people are. And I think whenever you talk about whiskey with anyone around the world, it's not about where you are, it's meeting them where they're at and having that conversation.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Actually, that's a really good statement because I think that's and you find it, peat and that can overpower those really subtle nuances, especially from cast finishes as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you really want to kind of enjoy something that's a bit more diverse, a lot more flavor notes coming through, you need to take that peat level right down.
Mm.
Um, I mean, she's achieved that here perfectly.
Yeah. And also, you can put people off an entire category by their first whiskey being big, peaty, smoky style. I mean, my wife, she did not like whiskey at all because in her younger years, her dad was like, "This is what whiskey is," and gave her a Lafroig, and she was like, "Whoa, I'm sensorily being attacked right now." And when I started at the distillery, she's like, "No, I'm not a whiskey fan. I'll just drink the gin. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine." And then I started giving her samples of the signature whiskey, which is just marmalade on toast in a glass.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she said, "Oh, so this is what whiskey can be." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah. It's completely different end of the spectrum." And now, 8 years later, my wife has her own personal flavor profile that she gravitates towards. She has her own perspective. She has her own preferences. And, I've just watched her on this journey from completely dismissing all the way through to her own curiosities and her own proclivities towards what she enjoys. And it's absolutely wonderful to see.
That's going to be amazing for you. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because also when we get a parcel delivered to the house, it's like, what have you been buying? And yeah, it's just great to see. And I hope that there are more people out there in the world that just want to embrace and bring more people to the category because one thing that is abundantly clear in whiskey in general right now is that there is no shortage of whiskey out there.
No.
there is an abundance coming out of America, out of Japan, China, um, England,
Yeah.
64 distilleries,
Yeah.
where there was 4 11 years ago. So there is an abundance of whiskey being made in the world. And one thing that all of us within the entire category need to do is we need to bring more people to category.
Yeah. I mean, and most of that I think comes through tastings. Because to your point there with your wife there, I mean, I remember even for COVID, we got a lot of husbands, wives on the taste test, and again, much like you said, the way they'd sampled it beforehand, whether it was the wrong liquid, the fact of just taking a liquid and necking it back, yeah, you're gonna do is get burned. If you educate the right way on how to enjoy it, and like you said, really pick up your own style, your own flavor profile, what you would gravitate towards. All of them got hooked on it, which is always a bit of a downfall because then only suddenly got to buy more whiskey now because they buy a more stuff, which is positive.
I was going to say, the retailer on the end of the Zoom call is going, oh no, here's the discount code.
Yeah, certainly, yeah, very much so. And but that is very true, and not just not just with women, but overall the market space. And like you see, with brands now have been very, I guess, I don't want to use the term millennial style packaging, but something that's really going to draw people in. And liquids that are lighter, more rounder, easier to drink. You had that a lot for many years from the Japanese. Irish, I mean, I think the main reason the growth in America's got even more in Irish is because they've always liked Irish whiskey. Because that again, that's round and mellow style because they've always been really into their bourbons. Yeah. But now you have an abundance of Irish liquids coming out. And again, because of that period of COVID, they did the same thing. They educated on why they need a better premium pot still over a elect. Yeah. And now they want more of it. Yeah. So that's why there's huge growth in there from that. Um, but again, it's bringing more people to market. It's good liquid across the entire board. With any, it's not just whiskey. Any spirit you can think of, the same as occurred. The amount of people that really, and that's probably more common, so can't stomach tequila because their nostalgic drawback is their days in university and college drinking Heads of Forever, which is absolute whatever it.
I mean, tequila was all about drinking from bottles that had hats
Yeah,
or worms in them.
yeah. It was
And
the gimmick, and it wasn't real agave good liquid.
not even close. And the hangovers you got from these were awful.
Yeah, and that's what you remember.
Yeah.
That's what you remember for years. When everyone even mentions the word tequila, oh no, no, no. So if you almost do it as a blind tasting style, give them a real 100% agave tequila, and Neo, for example, and then they try it and then they'd swear by it something different. Oh, it's not tequila. That's different. And
Yeah.
is what tequila is. So with gin, if someone had a really bulk standard £10 bottle from Tesco, you'd be like, oh, what the hell was that? Give them a real proper botanical gin. You turn someone on it, and that is, I think, across the entire board.
And I think going back to that point as well, the other way to really frame that is, with whiskey especially, is you don't have to drink it neat.
Yeah,
If gin had to be served exactly the same that whiskey is meant to be served, if you could only have gin room temperature and neat, nobody would drink gin. It'd be awful.
yeah.
But if you're all of a sudden going to elevate it by mixing it to a certain degree, or you're going to give respect to the ingredients by making a great cocktail, and it doesn't have to be, don't get me wrong, I do love a slushy, but it doesn't have to be in a hurricane glass and a slushy. It can be a really well-made Manhattan, or you can make a great gin martini, or you can make an old-fashioned. You can elevate spirits through a little bit of dilution and bringing the temperature down and let it all sing for it. And you just got to take rules off the table.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to stop telling people how they're meant to drink these things and having all of these rules where it's like, you can't add water, you can't add ice. It's like, if you keep telling people they can't do something, they're either just going to go, I'm not touching that, I don't care.
Yeah.
Or hopefully people are going to start breaking those rules and doing it on their terms. And I think that is a perspective and an approach I would love to see from more people when it comes to whiskey is, I drink whiskey on my terms.
Yeah.
That recalcitrance, that going against the grain, that going against the stigma and the norms of what a category for generations has told us is what whiskey should be. And it's actually just, no, I don't need to do what some dusty old um leather armchair guy. Yeah, I'm going to do what Alice Pearson from the Cotswolds tells
Yeah.
me to do, and that's I'm going to enjoy whiskey on my terms. And as long as that mentality perpetuates a lot more than the other, then at least we stand a chance of being able to maintain and uphold the huge quantity of really amazing small producers that are coming out into the world and making a category very, very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think people have said when we do our tastings, we always tell people that you have to drink it how you want to drink it. You know, everyone's got their personal preference. I don't hardly add water to my whiskey. Doesn't mean someone else can't. And then we educate people on how to add water in.
Yeah.
Because you always, you can always add, but you can't take away. So we always say, look, just add a couple of drops first, see if that opens enough for you. If you want to go highball wise, whack it in a highball.
Mm.
And there's whiskies out there that are designed for that as well. It's just finding the way that you like it. I mean, I love an old fashioned. Old fashioned is just amazing. It hasn't got to be whiskey, it could be rum, even tequila old fashions, to be fair. But yeah, it's everyone has their own style, and it's the same with flavor profiles. People get so panicky and worried when they come to the tasting. Some of that's going, "Oh, I've got no palate. I can't do that." So look, there's no real wrong answer unless you're going to turn around to me and tell me it tastes, completely unheard of flavors.
Yeah.
I said, but sometimes it's just the fact that you can't get that kind of memory connection, and there's always nostalgia there for you. There's something you might pick out that will just bring you back to a time. And then once, there's no harm in reading the back of a bottle to get the notes you should be picking out, because sometimes it's just you not being able to get that connection. But when you know it's there and you're looking for it and you're hunting for it, then you find it and then you're like, now I can remember that. So now if I have another whiskey without looking at the bottle, but I get the same note, I can say, oh, well, that's that. That's an orange zest. That's vanilla. That's apple. That's this.
I mean, we always aspire to do that. And I'd say that one of the best in the business right now, in my personal opinion, of being able to make information and flavor profiles accessible is Georgie and Fabrizio over at the Heart Cut. They're an independent bottler, but they have taken doing single cask whiskey in independent bottling formats completely towards what we've just discussed with regards to making things. They've gone for world whiskey mainly. They've done a couple of Scotch whiskey distilleries, but more of the new age styles like Macnean. 50 cl bottles so that they can keep the price at a good level. And then all of the tasting notes. I mean, we did a bottling with them, and it was, it was banana cream pie, and it was salted caramel, and you're just looking at flavor. Oh yeah, everyone likes pudding.
Yeah.
So you just basically go, right, well, let's see what puddings these all taste like. And all of a sudden you're just creating and generating a positive memory for someone to go, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
I might not get those flavors eventually, but sorry, I might not get those flavors immediately, but eventually they will come through. And yeah, I mean, the palate is a muscle, and you need to just keep reinvigorating and refreshing. And the amount of times that people must have said to you at various tastings, I just don't get what you're saying. I don't get those flavor profiles. All I can taste is burn. And it's like, well, you're not wrong. It's just you haven't tasted to the level or the extent or the continuous nature or to the level that we may have.
Yeah.
But it's a muscle,
And it's a muscle that also learns. It's educating circles.
100%. Absolutely. And I think if you can tap into people's curiosity through being very open with your language and transparency, then people will trust you more. People will come towards, be it your brand or your store or your tastings, your experiences, and they will come on that journey with you. I've said for the longest time ever, the reason that world whiskey and English whiskey is so exciting is because no one was around for the beginning of Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, bourbon. Everyone's here for the beginning of
Yeah,
this
exactly.
category.
True.
So everyone can come on the journey with.
Yeah.
And we're one of the few generations and the next generation that can say that. And so it's like, it's not only my brand or my category that I've been with since the beginning, it's the entire movement. And I think that's the most exciting part.
Sure. Actually, I've never really thought about it properly like that. That's a very true fact, and that's quite exciting that everyone gets to see exactly how it progresses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is very interesting, very interesting. And yeah, so what I didn't really quite know what to bring, because the last time I came in, I bought our own JJ Corey.
Cool.
I enjoyed that with Jordan from Angus Dundee. So this time I thought what I would do is grab off my shelf, just to kind of showcase Compass Box, I guess. This was my dram of last year, which I originally got in because we went to a whiskey show, Whiskey Live in London, and I sampled it there, then got it into the shop, And then I was adamant I was going to take one back home and enjoy. And this is a state of how much I drink at home. So it's that's what I class as enjoying. It takes me it, I don't get a lot of time at home to really sit down and I guess drink and relax. And it's not a big thing for me because I never have done.
So when that opportunity comes up,
Yeah,
it's super curated and it's got to fit the bill exactly.
exactly. And I had quite a big bar shelf. The wife moans at me because I don't really touch it too much and it's just sitting there. But it's the manly thing. You want like really nice shelf full of amazing stuff.
Which is also my wife's thing because she's got her own whiskey shop.
Well, as I say, you're lucky because now exactly that would be the case.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Actually, good encouragement. But this for me just blew me away. I mean, Compass Box has generally always been good.
Love, love, love Compass
And
Box.
Glaze obviously did a very big thing with his cask selections and blended options. But this one here, because like I said, I have a sweet tooth. So normally, if I have a peated whiskey, I would tend to go for like an Arbor a Port Charlotte,
Yeah.
something sweet like that. I think I had the Freud 16, which was aged in PX cask, and is phenomenal. I don't get me wrong, I can't, I'm fine with the bourbon cask finish and something like that, but I do prefer a sweeter palate. This one here is such a sherry bomb and a sweet finish that the peat, although it's insanely strong, it's all just come together really nice.
But they're so good at what they do. I recently got a bottle of Compass Box Nectarosity,
Yeah.
and talk about doing exactly what it says on the tin. We opened it and my wife and I both said, that is just nectarines through and through. And it was it was so good. There's about half a bottle left, but
I think it got released at the same time as this. Was it? There was a whole load of them released, and I remember seeing that one actually.
yeah, because Orchard House,
That's it.
Secrets of Smoke,
Yeah,
Nectarosity, and then another one as well.
yeah. There was another one, but I can't think. It was
Yeah, but the progression of what they're able to do, and then again, transparency, non-conventional packaging, complete openness about flavor,
Yeah.
components within the whiskey. You talk about
because they're quite open about what casts they've used in this. Because I think there's Lafroy, Bowmore, Colila, Ardmore. There's a lot, and they've actually got the breakdown on the back of the bottle.
that's so exciting, though. I mean, that's what got them in trouble, but that's what also gave them the notoriety in the early days. Was yeah, we're going to tell people what's in this whiskey, and
Well, that does get people in trouble nowadays.
yeah,
It's insane, and it's crazy because you think, well, if you want to showcase that your product's getting everywhere.
because it was the SWA were like, you can't do that. It's like, why?
Yeah, yeah.
Why can't you tell people what's in their bottle? Or it's like a chef going, enjoy your dish. I cannot tell you what's in here. It's like you'd be sat in a restaurant going, I
Taking the bite of that.
I don't want that. Yeah.
It's amazing, and actually, yeah, but even the packaging, we look though, it's all of their packaging actually is amazing. I love the way they've done this one because it's Secrets of Smoke. So rather than kind of having it stand out, it's actually embossed in black gloss the flavor profile notes. So you've got like there's a pineapple there. There's like a pear here for the sort of baked pear. I think there's apple as well. There's all kinds of stuff.
Devil's in the detail, right?
Yeah, it's literally all in there. But it's amazing. So that was my sort of spirit of the last, I guess, 6 months or so. And then I've also got, so I'll just run through them first because what I would say is we'll probably do this one first just because that's going to overpower the palate.
Smart.
I like that. But the other one I bought was, so we deal in cask investment, and a couple of times we've had to sell some quite heavy hitting casks, one of which was Macallan. So I had to get samples of these in for. And so this is a Macallan 1993. And I believe this was from a butt, could well be a sherry butt, hence the color. 50.7%, so it's not too extreme. But there's not many chances you get to try a Macallan of that age. So
Not only that, but Macallan has that ABV as well.
yeah, I mean that's a key factor as well because normally they're lower down. The most we've had before 46, 47%.
Yeah.
But have a little bit of that.
That's great, mate. Thank you so much. That's an absolute honor and a privilege.
We'll give it a go.
Delicious. Cheers. Thank you ever so much, as always.
It's got a good nose though.
It's brilliant. I mean, love or hate Macallan, you know, a lot of people love them. A lot more people love them than they do hate them.
Yeah.
They have changed the game with regards to the perspective of prestige, premium, luxury whiskey, and I mean, I know this guy called Ken Greer. He worked with Cotswolds quite a lot, and he kind of helped launch Macallan in the States. He very much was. We launched it in New York, and then we let it cascade out, and it was he also was the guy that helped position the Macallan in Skyfall.
Okay.
Was it Skyfall? Yes, it was Skyfall. Yeah, it was Javier Bardem putting the shot on the top of the head. Yeah, so he helped with the positioning of Macallan in that as well. All of these little different elements of positioning a brand and a bottle and the imagery of it in the right places at the right time to just sort of,
Yeah.
perpetuate this idea of luxury and the sherry cask and things like that. And Macallan, they've wrote the playbook on that. There's no other brand that comes close to what they're able to achieve in that regard.
It's a real sorry, mate, road guys. It's a real love-hate relationship, I think, with Macau, and you've hit it bang on the head there because there's people that love them, there's people that hate them now. There's people that used to love them and have changed away from them.
Yeah.
And I think that's purely because, I mean, we're in a position here where we actually have got, this is what I would call the good Macallan liquid. A lot of the people I know of that, aren't overly old, but they've had Macallans in the past. I think really since they redeveloped, I think it was 2011 since they did their new distillery kind of, tell you to be that, I mean. It's exactly the way I describe it. And that literally, I think, was the point they said, right, we don't really care too much about the drinker. I don't want to offend you about that. But they are the Rolls Royce asset class of whiskey. And they only want to release narrative stories, building these amazing releases, ballot led, and create this almost really forefront of the market of the kind of investable market. The problem that came from that, I think, was that then a lot of the hardcore whiskey drinkers didn't really start appreciating their 12 and 15-year-olds saying, this is more in recent years because it kind of changed, and in it to really enjoy a real decent Macallan of old, you want to have those kind of 1980s, 1990 releases, which we do have come through every now and again, of like a 12-year-old, which is a real amazing show liquid that they forefronted, they brought to the table.
Do you think it is actually ostracizing yourself away from your original core though?
Yeah.
Because when we started the Cotswolds Distillery, we were planning out distillations and aging, and we were forecasting. And I remember when we had our 5-year forecast for what we were going to produce versus what we were going to sell, all the maturation that goes into that, and then we got a 10-year forecast, and this is what we're going to make versus what we're going to age, what we're going to release. Macallan work on a 50-year timeline,
Yeah.
and when you work in 50, you're like the Benny Gesserit in June, we work in generations. We don't work in years and weeks and months. And that's kind of what the Macallan are. They're working in 50-year cycles. And when you start talking about 50-year cycles, you're no longer talking about consumers. You're talking about generations. So all of a sudden, in the last 30 years, they've gone from having a 12 and a 15 and, just what everyone else has rudimentarily done to going, the people that joined us back in those early days now are progressing and have perpetuated the brand to a level where they've got more money, their friends have got more money, the people that respect the brand have got more money. So we need to fill a gap and a void within our consumer base that are searching for the unobtainable. Is that a good thing? I don't know, because what happens when your son, my nephew, or anyone else in 25 years, they go, oh, I'm really interested in whiskey. And all of a sudden, you and I are sat around and we go, well, you can count Macallan out
Yeah.
because I'd have to sell this house just for a bottle of their bog standard. But hey, here's this Cotswolds. So I don't know whether they've thought about their production on a 50-year timeline. Have they thought about their consumer on a 50-year timeline? And I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very valid point because that's the thing. I mean, their 12-year-old sits around 75-ish now on the shelf. 15's about 175. But the 15, you look,
175 for a 15-year-old Macallan.
15. But when you look at brands like Danmore now that are 120, when they used to be 57 in a very short space of time, Glen's Hurt 155, roughly a bottle. So
Fundamentally, that is a great whiskey.
yeah, they're not having a strange structure.
That is delicious. Irregardless of what name is written on that bottle or anything like that, if you gave this to me blind, I'd go, that's a tasty dram.
Oh, it's good, isn't it? Definitely a sherry finish. Yeah, that is.
Loads of cherry, but loads of tropical fruit as well.
Yeah, there is actually. There's a lot of tropical notes in there.
Yeah.
That is really good. I mean, like it's 1993, so I would expect it, and I was. It's got the great.
And is this still in cask, I presume?
It would be. Yeah, I mean, but I would say it would be. This sample has been with me for 6 9 months. It could have been sold by now. At the time, we didn't actually end up selling that cask. We went with another one. But yeah, I would have assumed that at the time it was definitely in the cask, but now probably maybe.
Yeah. I mean, like I said,
So when they come on the market, they tend to rotate quite quickly. Yeah, there's not many out there anymore because they stopped them from '99 anyway. So there's not many kind of.
no, I think
Right,
this
yeah.
this is something that, we should only touch on lightly because it's quite a volatile subject at the moment. But this is it. When we talk about casks and people buying casks and things like that, there are no Macallan or Dalmore casks in huge circulation anymore. They're out there, but you're talking about a specific realm of people that deal in them,
Yeah.
and there aren't many of them. And I think it's that exposure and those sales of those casks in the last 15 years that have gone, right, well, that means that everyone else is going to be able to do this and everyone can hop on that train. And
But
yeah,
and this is the problem we find actually because we constantly we retail, but then we sell a hell of a lot of casks, and we do find our biggest hindrance is people that come with all the best intentions in the world to say, well, I want they're not naive or anything. It's just they don't know. Is that they come and say, well, I love Lafroig, I love Lagavulin, I love Damor, I want that cask. Can you get me a cask? And you're like, okay, well, we can find, and we have been able to source before. We've actually sold some pretty decent priced Damors recently, and yeah, younger years. Yeah. But some of them, they are, like you said, because of the way that the world's gone, they are priced for future. So they, you'll get a Lagavulin or a Lafroig, I think I've had before, where it's a 16-year-old and you price it up, and anyone that has got any kind of smarts to them would go and work out the maths and go, hold on a minute, there's that many bottles in there. That's more than what a 16-year-old has in the shelf in the local supermarkets. How does that work out? And it's valued because someone knows what they're sitting on, and they know that if you hold that from where it is now until it's 32 or 40 years old, then you're sitting on a gold mine. And that is worth a hell of a lot of money. And that then whacks the price up. And that a lot of that has come because of Macallan. A lot of the new makers, the massive, they're well priced and they're really good, but Macallan have done that in that era. But the problem is that's what's, I think, hurt the market a bit more is those special releases that have come out for the bottle side of things and the bottle investments.
yeah,
Because they did it so much. And when people really start digging into it after, when the hype's drawn down, they start doing actual reading and saying, well, what have I actually just bought? And they read what liquid's in there, how old it is, and what they've actually done. James Bond, it's all the same liquid. But people didn't necessarily know that because in auctions, I was questioning, well, why is that going for 3.5 and that's going for 2.5 and 1.5? It's the same. It's the printed tube. I can print the tube if you want.
yeah. I mean, there's just. I mean, I sell casks at the distillery, but I just kind of say to people, you want to buy a cask of Cotswolds whiskey? Do it for fun, family, and friends. Do it because you love the brand. Do it because you want to be in it, because it's just cool to be on the journey with us. Kind of like Dan did with Brookladdy. He's still got a little bit of liquid in his cask. He's 22-year-old.
Yeah.
But he,
But it's just a thing. It's a legacy thing. And a lot of people come and we have got casks we can get people in for a short term. Mostly it would be a bourbon cask, something that's in and out relatively quick. But normal cask sales, I would always tell people that it's a 10-year minimum, but really think of it as the retirement plan, as something to hand down to your kids as a generational thing. Because the long term is where it really is.
I think it's the unknown as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's. I mean, not to sort of, like I said, we'll flash on and off of this one, but it is one of those where Macallan have got a 50-year plan.
Yeah.
I don't have a 50-year plan.
Yeah.
And I think it is, if we all had crystal balls, I mean, me and you would be millionaires. We wouldn't be doing a podcast. We'd just be out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
living off the fact that we know exactly what the future of the whiskey industry looks like. And,
Yeah.
you know, living off the fact that we know exactly what the future of the whiskey industry looks like. And Yeah, I don't know. It's 30 years ago, there was Scotch whiskey distilleries and there was Macallan casks out there and things like that. And, the world was a very sort of black and white place when it came to whiskey because you knew exactly where you stood. Scotch was the apotheosis, bourbon was exciting, Irish did what it did, and there was a few scatterings of everything else. I was speaking to a guy the other day who he works at a distillery in China. He worked at Kavlan for a long time and he grew up in New Zealand. Anyway, very, very knowledgeable about the guy about the entire market around whiskey over in Japan, Taiwan, and China. In 5 years, China will out produce Scotland per litre in whiskey. So in 5 years, there'll be 500 million litres of whiskey being produced in China.
So that's even beating Ireland as well. Yes, I think they were on the track to kind of beat Scotland as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's no, I mean, and that's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's going to go. Because, yeah, really, everyone, I mean, going back to our original point, you talk about India. A lot of what is drank whiskey wise in India is barely definable as whiskey. It's known as IMFL, which is Indian made foreign liquor.
Yeah.
Um,
This is their problem, though, because they're screaming out the liquid and they can't get it. So they have a lot of this kind of, yes, it's more like a rum-based spirit with whiskey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's like a jaggery sweetener and just like a normal spirit, and then they do put in some single malt whiskey, but it will be 3-year-old of the lowest value. I won't say quality, value, and then made to resemble a whiskey.
Yeah.
And you'll get it in 200 ml bottles, and they'll just dump it in a pint glass and then put the same in with water, and that's how it's drank. Um, yeah, I think not to sort of say that that's wrong or China having 500 million liters is wrong or anything like that. I think there are just so many huge variables. Someone said to me the other day, and I could be way off on this one, but from 1 liter stills up to the commercial like MGP style distilleries that are almost refineries. In America, there's 30,000 distilleries.
I didn't think it was that much. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, it's amazing. It's very big compared to us, but then in relation to say China and India, yeah, it's still
Yeah. And then 150 new distilling licenses were issued in Japan alone last year.
I mean, I know that when we spoke to Jordan Angus Dundee, they were opening, I believe he said in China, India. So they're actually building some out there, which obviously is great for logistics and I guess the carbon footprint because it's not really being produced
Yeah, I mean,
used on site.
in a lot of distributors in India are like saying to distilleries, listen, if you want to crack the market over here and you want to hit the price points that were needed over here because of the huge taxation, even though it's come down, it hasn't come down regionally. So whatever you've got coming down nationally, it's still going up regionally with regards to taxation is. And they've said to a lot of distilleries, if you produce under your name here, then that will allow you to grow within the market. But I mean, us personally, we couldn't even think of doing that.
Yeah.
Just releasing that much freedom of your IP and your distillery character, it does make it quite scary.
But like that, you're never going to achieve the same flavor profile, especially in India. You know, your angel share is so much higher, and the climate, you'd be producing a completely different liquid. That's the only difference. So you'd have to reopen. I mean, they do obviously. I know that they have very many different, I said brand names underneath their umbrella. So they probably would just come up with a new name. But it's it's definitely you need the growth to follow with it. So and like you say, getting more people into whiskey. I think the way that now that there's so many different variants of cask and everything, I think it will go hand in hand. Um, it just needs to be enough. It needs to be enough indeed. Let's give this a go then. So yeah, see, let's go. Fox. So like I said, this is definitely a bit of a peat monster. But it's
Literally and figuratively, yeah, because there is some peat monster in there.
there is actually. Yeah, you're right. There is.
That nose is so good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And what I have done as well, which I always tend to do, is I've got some dark chocolate there because I always love pairing stuff. I did on the last one actually. So that's just simple sea salt, dark chocolate.
I just love chocolate.
It honestly does work really well with a peaty whiskey. The saltiness cuts through.
I'm going to cover up my mic while I chew while I chew on some chocolate, so that people that have is it misophonia?
Misophonia, what's that?
I mean, you know,
What, fear of chewing?
hearing people chew.
Fear? Oh, really?
Mm.
I think it is. I'm quite a loud chewer, actually, especially when I eat crisps.
Tell us in the comments, is misophonia the right thing?
Yeah.
That is delicious, though. I'm such a chocoholic. And then with the people,
And whiskey is just, and there's so many different variants as well because you can get the right ones, pair the right flavor profile. Like I'd have an orange chocolate all day long.
whoa, that is a pokey little number, but not aggressive. 50% ABV.
A little bit high efficacy.
Alcohol is so good on that. That is, it's clean, it's soft, it allows flavor to shine through. With the chocolate, it's outstanding. And then smoke is there, but then it actually finishes a lot more, like you say, tropical and fruity and balanced. Outstanding. Good work, Compass Box.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is delightful.
Oh,
And with the chocolate as well. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
And again, going back to Alice's point about using a little bit of salt to elevate flavor as opposed to try and change it, it does make your taste buds stand on edge and sort of actually respond a little bit more to the different flavors that are being provided.
Yeah.
Absolutely outstanding. Not saying that you need to be like licking salt off your hand before you have a dram of whiskey like you would awful tequila that has hats on the bottle. But yeah, I think if it's delivered through something that is delicious as sea salt and dark chocolate, or, you know, even if you're having, I always like Iberico ham and things like that with sherry casks, especially if you've got something like a really good quality full-term aged Oloroso or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, outstanding. And it just brings all those flavors to life in so many different elements as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, this is just fantastic. But yeah, with chocolate, that's the first time I actually had with chocolate.
Yeah, absolutely divine.
That is amazing.
Yeah, salute to Compass Box on that one.
Yeah. We had bought that long actually.
Yeah.
What reminds myself of how good it was last year.
I'm definitely going to treat myself to some nectarosity when I get home tonight.
Well, have you got any left? Because you did say you're not sure if it's empty.
Yeah, we'll see.
And I guess just the last thing to touch on, because I did read on it, and going back to now with Alison's release, did you release your own? Because I see you had your own. They offered you your own Patchett release.
Yeah.
Edition as well.
Yeah,
Was that
good research.
or just for yourself?
I didn't. No pay rise this year. You can just have a barrel of whiskey. Yeah. So Dan, as ever, he's all about nurturing people within the business, so that if you've got a passion, if you've got a proclivity, if you've got a curiosity, then you can progress within the business really fluidly. And what he said to us last year, we were doing our usual sensory tasting in the blending room, and he said, "Do you know, we usually release maybe 3 or 4 single casks through our shop every year." And he said, "You know what? This year you guys choose." There was our old production director, Nick, Alice, and myself, and we were like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Go into our house, choose yourself some casks, sample them, and then you put your name on it, and that is your cask. And, you know, if your belief is that strong in that cask, we'll release it through the shop under, you know, mine was the Patchett, and Alice was the Alice, and Nick's was the Francino, and then Dan ended up doing his own. And of course, he bowled in at the last hour at Christmas and did this incredible PX cask that outsold everyone's time-wise. But yeah, I did a Madeira cask. So the Patchett, my name, my surname, was a Madeira cask. And again, the Madeira casks, they didn't start well for us when we were doing young samplings. They weren't great. And then after 4 or 5 years, we got to a decent level. And then, yeah, I think I tasted a 7-year-old. I was like, that is Victoria sponge cake with caramel sauce. That is unbelievable. I was like, I'm putting my name on this. Tried it at different ABVs, and I just thought the cask strength actually held the flavor the best. So yeah, I released a Madeira cask under the Patchett, under my name. And yeah, I mean, between that and then, you know, at the beginning of the year, the World Whiskey Awards gave me the Best World Whiskey Ambassador title.
Well, I was waiting for you to mention that at the beginning because I was like, well, that's quite a big accolade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's again.
I had no idea it was coming at all. I was on the train down to London, as I did today, and they were starting to announce the nominations and some of the winners for the World Whisky Awards. And my colleague Georgie from the Heart Cut, she texted me going, "Congratulations!" And I was like, "Oh, Cotswolds has won something. That's amazing." And then she sent me a screenshot that I'd been named World Whisky Ambassador of the Year, and I, I just shouted, "F me" at the top of my lungs on the train, and like I had to apologize to a whole load of people around me, but I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea it was coming, and I had no idea I'd even been nominated, and so to actually win the award was huge. And I haven't said and talked about it enough, but it was such an honor and a privilege and humbling that
It was a culmination of your being for the last 20, 30 odd years. Yeah, dude, from the point of leaving Yorkshire to Italy and then having everything happen and do all your education, do your learning, then come back, take the role, progress through it with the
yeah,
pot of whiskey. It's everything together.
yeah, and it was mind blowing. And I'm still, even today, 6 months later, still just sort of in my mind going, yeah, I can't believe that happened. But it was such a good ride, because also the ambassadorial role that I got through Cotswolds was something, going back to my original point about, how you get into things. The reason that I even became an ambassador at Cotswolds, because if I ever did tastings or trainings or presentations, if I didn't know something, I went to the production team, I asked questions, I got the answers so that I could tell everyone clearly and concisely what we do, why we do it, how we do it. And that just continues and builds to the point where it's not just little fragments of knowledge, it's muscle memory on being able to communicate our brand, our story, and our whiskey. And if you just continue that, it just got to the point where I think I did another podcast. It was back in 2022, and it got circulated around the management team, and they just went, "You should be our ambassador." And I went, "Yeah, you're right, I should." And that was it. And it is, to anyone that ever wants to be an ambassador or anything of that nature, if you want to be an advocate, if you want to be someone that works within whiskey and tells stories, just ask questions, feed your own curiosity, and through time you will gain stories and you will gain anecdotes, and keep feeding the curiosity. You never know everything, ever, in whiskey. No one,
Too much to learn.
there's too much. But if you just keep feeding that curiosity and you believe, I mean, I truly, with every ounce in my body, believe in the Cotswolds and what we do and why we do it, then all of a sudden work isn't work anymore. It's just looking people in the eye, telling people a story and going, this is why we love what we do. And then if you can get a job out of that as well, that takes you around the world to do it, I'm like the luckiest man on the planet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's end there, because that's a great note to end on. I just want to thank you again for coming down.
Thank you.
Like I said, second podcast in. So I just wanted to get the ball rolling with some really good heavy hitters, and it just made sense to me. Even after just the initial just small talk, just to get you in. So I appreciate you coming down. The great chat, the great liquid, and then I wish you all the best in the future. And hopefully, like I said, we'll work even closer with Cotswold going forward. And like I said, just the last thing as well, if you can ever get a chance to go down to the Cotswolds and visit them, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, come see us. We're open 7 days a week.
And you get a lot of visitors a year as well.
About 130,000 come to the distillery. So come down, have lunch with us, do a tour, have a tasting. Maybe if I'm around, just say hey. And yeah, we're always open to visitors.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks.
And then that's it for this edition of the podcast. Join us next time for the tasting room.